Hey guys, I know this video is going to seem like a bit of an info dump, but there is a lot of groundwork to cover, and much of it is going to overlap with each other, so it kind of just makes sense to go over the bulk of it in one go. And this is going to be structured somewhat like a lecture, so feel free to pause the video at any point, write notes, rewind and watch it again, anything that helps you just kind of grasp the information that much better. And before we begin, I just want to give a huge shout out to Emerellum, the player probably responsible for 90% of my knowledge of the game. Really influential in helping put all this information together. I'm going to just go ahead and say it's probably going to be mostly him. The other amount that I pieced together from a bunch of the good guys at the Discord, I don't have time to give you all shoutouts because it's going to be... There's a lot of you guys. And don't forget that most people who like and subscribe to my videos win more of their matches. So let's begin. So you want to learn how to play Advanced Wars. Advanced Wars is a game that utilizes one's own cognitive function, so in order to climb the mountain of one's own abilities, we first must begin at the bottom. This series is going off in the assumption that one already possesses basic occupational awareness, i.e. the user interface, knowing how to create, move, and overall just interact with one's pieces. Therefore, do not expect to go over such topics. That being said, some topics covered may seem remedial for intermediate players, but will be important to establish as we'll derive concepts further. Advanced Wars by Web is difficult to learn because it involves complex strategies and tactics that require logical thinking and foresight. Additionally, players must adapt to unpredictable situations during games, often making it challenging to master even after extensive study. Explaining can be difficult because it often involves translating complex ideas into simpler terms that others can understand, which requires a deep understanding of the subject as well as superb linguistic skills. Additionally, people may struggle with identifying jargon, over-explanations, under-explanations, or simply not being provided adequate context, leading to confusion. The goal of this series is to help players understand long-term planning and positional understanding, beyond just tactics or memorized openings. Teaching how to evaluate positions based on pace activity, unit structure, and weakness. Helping players learn how to formulate and execute long-term plans based on the position's needs. Encouraging deeper thinking and better evaluation of moves rather than impulsive or superficial choices. Teaching common strategic motifs like chaining, first strikes, and overloading. Helping players understand various types of positions. Promoting critical thinking and patience. In short, the goal is to transform a new player into a complete player who can both spot immediate threats and steer the game towards long-term goals. Starting with the main objective of a match. How does one achieve victory in Advanced Wars by Web? There are 4 possible methods for winning a match. Capturing an opponent's HQ or all of their labs. Destroying all enemy units. Capturing approximately 2/3 of the map's income properties. More overall properties owned than the opponent by the day limit. Do note that City Cap applies in Global League games, while day limit is exclusive to tournament play. But this isn't how most matches end. Usually, matches end by resignation, usually by achieving an overwhelming advantage against the opponent, so that the chance of making a comeback is negligible. These often include overwhelming difference in army value, overwhelming income advantage, we'll say between 2 or 3 cities over the long run. This will affect the build order enough that the opponent will not be able to counter all threats provided. Overwhelming unit count. 10 is a nice round indicator on most maps. Uninterruptible HQ cap. Captured base. This leads to opportunistic builds, as well as a natural unit count advantage. On some maps, base trades are expected, so as long as they can be achieved within a day or two of each other. Locked airports. If the opponent cannot build copters, they will suffer from a naturally lower unit count, and still be forced to be building anti-air, while your own builds will not be requiring anti-air, choosing to rather focus on tanks, copters, and infantry. Now, these are all great goals to strive for in your match, and to procure them, tactics and strategy are required. Strategy is the overarching plan or long-term vision for achieving a goal, while tactics are the specific actions or short-term steps taken to implement the strategy. Let's take this map for example. What would be a good possible objective to strive for on this map? Being that the map is full of choky pathways, mountains, and sea tiles, this forward-leaning airport could prove quite integral to defeating the opposing army. So what if we could delay, or possibly stop the opponent from capturing theirs? This would lead to a board state, where we could potentially leverage into one of the game states that achieve victory. In this case, our goal is one of the several win conditions. The strategy is to stop or resist the opponent's capture of the airport without delaying our own. And the tactics are the specific moves we will take to get there. Good tactics will aid in accomplishing specific strategy, and good strategy will usually open the door for easier and more effective tactics. Strength in one can be leveraged into strength of the other to compensate for their weaknesses. Introduction to game resources. To successfully implement your strategies and tactics, you will need to take advantage of the resources provided by the game. Resources refer to any in-game element or attribute that can be gained or lost during the gameplay, or something inherently available to one side but not the other. These resources generally fall into two categories: material resources and tempo resources. Material resources are assets that remain with a player unless they are deliberately used up or removed through interaction with the other players. They can include unit count, army value, CO day-to-day powers, CO power charge, controlled properties, and other considerations. Tempo resources represent advantages that, unless a player takes deliberate action to sustain them, will naturally shift back towards balance over time. Tempo resources include tactical positioning and strategic positioning, army balance, counter units, tech up potential, and vision potential. Unit count is the most versatile resource on the battlefield. Having more units in a given area is a key requirement for many tactics. In Advanced Wars, a unit is only allowed to attack once per turn. Therefore, a higher unit count directly impacts the number of possible attacks and your army's ability to control and occupy key spaces. When comparing armies of equal cost, the one with more units typically has greater tactical flexibility and is better equipped to respond to threats. Unless you are skipping production from bases, your unit count is mainly affected by how well you eliminate enemy units and preserve your own. Always ensure you are producing units from every available base. In the example shown, 28 infantry units can easily overpower a mega tank in combat, even though they cost the same and the mega tank is a higher tech unit. The infantry can also quickly capture properties and block the mega tank's movement. In many situations, sheer numbers like swarms of infantry can solve or at least delay most problems effectively. Building on the earlier discussion, it is important to highlight that unit count directly determines how many attacks you can make per turn, one per unit. In Advanced Wars, a unit usually requires 2 attacks to be destroyed by units of the same type or even by those 1 tech level higher. For example, An infantry unit can be taken out by 2 infantry units or 2 tank attacks. A medium tank can eliminate an infantry in a single strike. Similarly, tanks typically need 2 hits to be taken down, whether by other tanks or by medium tanks. Taking out a tank in one blow usually requires a neo-tank. Because of this dynamic, unit count tends to snowball. Falling behind in unit count means having fewer attacks available, which makes it harder to eliminate enemy units and catch up. On the other hand, having more units gives you extra attacks, making it easier to wipe out your opponents and increase your advantage. In the illustrated example, 2 tanks, despite being cheaper than a medium tank, can eliminate the rocket unit positioned on the forest. The medium tank, by contrast, can only deal heavy damage. Army value is a high-level metric that reflects many aspects of a player's overall military strength. It directly impacts the ability to generate CO charge and loosely correlates with the overall health of your units and the technological level of your army. Army value is influenced by making favorable trades in combat and maintaining a higher income. In the scenario shown, Blue Army has invested in stronger units, opting for an additional tank instead of more infantry. This allows them to push forward confidently. If the Red Army does not pull back, Blue's extra tank will likely secure the win. CO abilities vary from one commander to another. These abilities represent a resource that isn't always balanced at the start of a match. One player may begin with an inherent advantage. They enable one side's units to behave in ways the others cannot. This can have a major impact on tactical options available to each player, often shaping which strategies are viable or optimal for specific COs. Since charge is gained when taking damage, CO power also acts as a comeback mechanic. The losing side often gains access to their powers early, potentially turning the tide of battle. For example, if the blue player is using Von Bolt plus 10 attack and defense against a player using Sasha who lacks any combat boost, Von Bolt's initial attack on the city yields a favorable result. In contrast, Sasha's counterattack actually suffers more damage than it deals. Properties and production are generally the hardest to acquire, especially after the opening phase of the game. They represent your ability to passively grow your army's value and unit count over time. These effects accumulate gradually. Falling behind in material income usually isn't immediately fatal. You often have time to recover or make up the difference through superior tactics or engagements. However, if all other factors are equal, a sustained income disadvantage will eventually lead to a slow but steady defeat. Capturing a production facility can have more immediate impact on the game, particularly if it allows units to be produced closer to the front lines. The value of comm towers depends on the scale of the battle. Their bonus of 10% attack can determine whether a unit survives or is destroyed, especially when it comes to hitting important thresholds. That said, the exact value of a comm tower is highly situational and difficult to quantify. In lab capture games, where there is no HQ, controlling multiple labs gives you the option to fall back from a front if needed. If you control only one lab, you're forced to defend it regardless of what's happening elsewhere on the map. Tempo resources represent dynamic, often interrelated elements of gameplay. Due to their fluid nature, these aspects frequently overlap or influence one another. Tactical positioning is the exact spaces your units occupy on the battlefield. Strategic positioning, the broader distribution of your forces across the map. Unit balance encounters, how well your army is matched against your opponent's current setup. Tech up potential, your capacity to transition into or respond to higher tier units. Vision potential, how much information you have about the enemy's unit locations and composition. And the player versus environment aspect of the game, including infrastructure, upgrades, and other long-term investments. Tactical positioning refers to the precise placement of units along the front line. Key considerations include: are your units positioned to support or protect one another? Are key objectives adequately defended? Are you making effective use of terrain advantages? Even though Red has a major material advantage, their units are poorly positioned and unable to stop the HQ capture, resulting in a loss. With just one more turn, Red could have repositioned to effectively defend the HQ. Red's units are stuck on terrain that offers no defense, giving Blue the opportunity to land several uncontested first strikes. If Red had another turn, they could reposition on high defense tiles to better absorb the attack, or retreat out of range. Also, if it were Red's turn instead, their offensive would be weakened due to Blue occupying defensive terrain. Strategic considerations. How much are you committing to each front or conflict? Idle units can lead to missed opportunities. Your opponent may gain more from their actions than you do from inaction. In this map, Red's units are mostly positioned in the north, while Blue has focused more forces in the south. Red's troops appear to be holding back, whereas Blue is actively advancing, ready to engage Red's forces and begin capturing properties. Even though both sides have similar unit counts, Blue holds a more aggressive and advantageous position. If Red had the chance to act freely, repositioning their northern forces forward would improve their tactical presence and pose a greater threat. Balancing forces. Does your army have the right units to effectively counter your opponent's forces, or are your units poorly matched? Understanding how different units interact is crucial. Some units are heavily countered by specific counter units. Certain units remain useful even when damaged, while others must stay healthy to be effective. In this scenario, both armies have the same number of units, and Red's army is more costly. However, Blue has the advantage because of its anti-air units effectively countering Red's forces. Red currently lacks a way to deal with this threat. Tech up potential. This concept builds on army balance, but also considers units that haven't been deployed yet. It becomes especially important during battles near production facilities where reinforcements can quickly shift the balance. Saving funds between turns can also influence this dynamic, allowing for higher tech unit deployment at crucial moments. Upgrading to stronger units at the right time can often turn the tide of battle more effectively than deploying a larger number of weaker units. Engaging near an enemy base without a solid plan to tech up can lead to overextension, even if you appear to have the upper hand. Red's push with only tanks is easily countered by a medium tank from Blue. While Red may capture a property, it is likely to lose a few tanks in the process. If Red chooses to retreat, it means pulling back 22,000 funds worth of units from an area contested by only 17,000 funds worth of Blue units. With more time, Red could develop a more efficient counter to Blue's heavy tank. Blue, on the other hand, is attacking with artillery support, which is ideal for countering heavy tank builds, unless Red is prepared to invest in a mega tank, a costly choice with trade-offs. Red risks losing significant value defending this front. On many maps, Red won't have the income to produce a mega tank without playing ahead by saving funds, something Blue can anticipate and exploit. In Fog of War, vision is essential before launching an attack. Heavier units typically have limited sight range. Without sufficient vision, you risk poor movement choices and ineffective attacks. While Red's army is stronger on paper, it suffers from a lack of vision, making it difficult to engage Blue's forces effectively. Red would be forced to blindly advance with its medium tanks, risking ambush or entrapment, especially if it's unclear what units Blue has in place. In contrast, Blue can safely target and destroy one of Red's tanks without fear of retaliation. Since Red can't spot targets without vision, notably Red's lead tank can't attack until it has visibility. Over time, Red could mitigate this by producing a recon unit to improve its line of sight and better match Blue's tactical awareness. Development. This concept is most relevant during the capture phase and applies to securing properties, breaking pipe seams, and capturing island properties that require transport units. It overlaps with other strategic ideas, but stands out when the opponent cannot interfere directly with the completion of these objectives. The main trade-off is investing these early, you'll temporarily have fewer resources available to engage or respond to your opponent's actions. Blue has invested in a black boat to reach and capture the property and comm tower on the island. While the black boat offers no combat value, the captured properties will gradually return the investment, assuming Blue doesn't fall too far behind elsewhere. Red, on the other hand, has skipped the island and used the funds to produce a tank. This may allow Red to gain a short-term advantage elsewhere on the battlefield. However, the island properties could provide more value over time. Red still has the option to pursue the island later, effectively returning to that tempo investment, but won't benefit from the income in the meantime. Improving through resource awareness. Why it takes time to break down resource concepts. Strategic planning and tactical execution aim to give you an edge over your opponent. But what exactly defines that edge? Thinking about positions and outcomes in terms of resources gives you a clear, objective way to judge whether one result is better than another. To succeed, players must use their resources to either gain more or deny them from their opponent. However, this can be difficult to track because the values of different resources shifts as the game progresses. Tempo resources are particularly challenging, since their value is temporary and situational. Even when it's not a deliberate calculation, top players excel because they constantly trade up, converting their decisions into greater overall resource gains over time. Hey guys, thanks for sitting through the entire video. I really hope you learned something. There is more planned. Again, a huge shout out to Emerellum being influential into making this whole thing happen. And if you guys did like this, please please subscribe, share it. It really helps get my videos out there. Thanks.